Hello and welcome to Lost Within Lost, the podcast where we are re-rewatching the 10 highest rated episodes of Lost. My name is Dan and my controversial Lost opinion is that The Constant, while an entertaining piece of television, is not even in the top 10 of Lost episodes. Put that in your pipe and smoke monster it.
Hello, my name is Chris, and Dan, I'm going to need to see that list. Yes, hello again, and welcome to Lost Within Lost, the podcast where we rewatch, recap, and review the 10 highest episodes of Lost. This week, we are all about the number 8, as we will be discussing The Incident, parts 1 and 2.
Yes, one of the lost numbers, the
Yes.
first lost number we've done on the countdown.
Serendipitous, and probably the most confusing, or at least this really opens a huge can of worms. So very, very apt. Plus, we will be doing our very own number 8s as we continue to build our own personal top 10 list. A list that, at least from Dan's perspective, will never include The Constant.
Yeah, guilty as charged.
And if people want to check out the list,
yes, if people want to check out the list, just head to our social media sites at Lost Within Lost on Twitter or Blue Sky, depending on where you prefer to reside. Or if you don't want to reside in either of those places, you better head over to IMDb where they've got the official top 10 list there.
All right. First things first, though, a little bit of tidying up from last week.
Previously on Lost.
Within
Lost.
Now, last week I mentioned that Man of Science, Man of Faith, that was what we covered last week, had done something crazy like 23 million viewers or something in the US. It was the highest viewed episode of Lost, including, I believe, even the finale. So I was really curious, like, well, how did we go in Australia, especially since people were literally yelling at the suits in Channel 7. So I found out that it did 2.1 million viewers.
Mm-hmm.
That's just in metro cities alone. If a show was to do 2.1 million viewers today, you're talking AFL NRL grand final type numbers. That is how insane things were back in 2006. The premiere Man of Science, Man of Faith went up against Midsummer Murders over on Channel 9, so they'd clearly given up.
Yeah, correct decision.
Yes, and over on 10, I think it was double repeats of Medium.
Oh, God, Medium, okay.
Yes, also thrown in the towel, although I think it was a new episode of Smallville had run at 7:30. So
I was still recapping Smallville, but presumably I somehow wrangled the two there. I would have probably watched Lost, then come back to Smallville. That's what VCRs were for.
Yeah, well, I think Smallville was on at 7:30, so this sounds like a night right up your alley, Dan. 7:30, Smallville, 8:30, Lost.
Yep, perfect. And then a bit of Midsummer Murders if I got bored in the ad breaks.
Yes, if you'd set the DVR. Also, I would never forgive myself if I hadn't also mentioned a couple of Was Never on the Islands that were glaringly obvious misses from me. I need to mention DJ Qualls, who worked at Tech. So I've got two McClux employees. DJ Qualls, who is Hurley's friend in Everybody Hates Hugo, season 2, episode 4. The legendary DJ Qualls, he's just one of those guys.
Yeah, he's very distinctive.
Very distinct. Can play anything, including an undercover cop, FBI agent in Breaking Bad. I think that's one of my favorite DJ Qualls appearances. And do you know Sam Levine? He of Freaks and Geeks fame.
Okay, yep.
Appears in season 6. Everybody Loves Hugo. He serves Hurley at his own McCluck's restaurant when he's depressed and he's eating a bucket of chicken. This is the Everybody Loves Hurley. He's a philanthropist.
Yes. The money's brought him nothing but good luck.
Yes. And he comes across Libby, and then he's all depressed because he can't date her because she's in a mental home.
That's right.
And there's not a young Sam Levine. This is post Freaks and Geeks, who just would go on to play many a bit role. But I wanted to bring him up because one of my favorite early podcasts this is what I want to learn from you, Dan. Did you ever listen to the Kevin Pollak Chat Show
I did, yes. Yeah,
podcast?
every now and
Yes.
then, not regularly, but sporadically, depending on
Yes.
his guests, basically.
Yeah, one of the best uses of the format where
Mm,
I think he was the first person that realized all people want to do is listen to celebrities or interesting people talk for a couple of hours uninterrupted.
yep.
I will never forget him having Tom Hanks on, and they spoke so long that by the end of the conversation, Tom Hanks was just talking about how he would play Cards Against Humanity with his kids, with his sons. I don't know if it is Colin Hanks, the well-respected Colin Hanks, or whether
Hmm.
it is Chet Hanks, the
Right.
laughing stock. Chet, oh, it makes me think it's Chet Hanks. But anyway, Sam Levine, who makes an appearance, both McCluck's employees had to get a mention in for both of those. Never on the island, although I wish DJ Qualls had maybe made it on that Adira flight.
Well, you never know. I mean, I guess once Hurley takes over the island at the end, who knows who he invites over there after Lost officially ends. So you never know. Maybe he popped over to visit Hurley while Hurley was in charge.
Of course, yes, yeah, because I assume he was always free to go and come back. Although something tells me he
Yeah.
never left the island.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about the incident, part 1 and 2.
Yeah. So this is the season 5 finale, episodes 16 and 17. What's the IMDb recap of this particular one?
Jack and Saeed's plan faces resistance from Sawyer, Juliet, and Kate. Also, Locke, Richard, Ben, and the others reach Jacob at the foot of the statue. At the site of the ancient statue remains, Locke assigns Ben a difficult task that involves Jacob's fate.
Spoiler, he tries to kill him. He makes him kill him.
Yes. And spoiler, Jack is determined to do a thing. Jack is determined to go ahead with Faraday's plan.
Yes.
Now, these things are always underwhelming. I want to know how did you recap this episode 20 years ago, please?
I apologize in advance because this is longer than I usually do. I try to usually do a just a quick paragraph. These ones are a couple of paragraphs each for each episode, so it's a little bit longer. But I'll try and get through it without boring you too much. Part 1. So the Doc, now apparently totally done with this first do no harm nonsense, plans to blow the bejesus out of the Dharma Initiative with Jughead. Jughead, the Archie Comics character, says Saeed. No, Jughead the hydrogen bomb, says the Doc. That does make more sense, says Saeed. And he puts aside his issue of Betty and Veronica and starts perusing Faraday's journal instead. There he learns how to get just the totally explodious bit out of the bomb, put it in a backpack, sneak it into the Dharma camp, and get shot by that idiot Phil. Thanks, Faraday. While this is going on, Kate, Sawyer, and Juliet decide to commandeer their submarine, Red October style, and return to the island to stop the Doc from going through with his foolhardy scheme. But not before bumping into Rose, Bernard, and Vincent the dog for a chinwag about the joys of retirement. While all this is going on, or if one is hung up on accuracy, not at all at the same time as this is going on, Locke continues his march to visit Jacob, where he plans to kill him, or, again for the accuracy Nazis, plans to have Ben kill him. Which is rather rude considering Jacob has devoted the episode to making vitally crucial appearances in all the other characters' lives. Still, that's undead Locke for you. Big on murdering and being in touch with the island, low on common courtesy. That was the first part.
So good.
So, while Saeed lies dying from a gunshot wound in the back of a Dharma van, the worst place to get shot with a bullet, the Doc and Sawyer decide to wander off for some good old-fashioned fisticuffs. They beat the snot out of one another for a bit until Juliet calls an end to it. She's changed her mind and now wants to help the Doc set off the nuke. For the love of JJ, why? Exclaims Sawyer. Juliet explains that she, like well over 98% of the viewing audience, is just fed the fuck up with all the relationship melodrama. If we blow up the nuke, that will end it, surely, she says. But alas, Sawyer knows better. And so as Saeed continues to bleed out in the background, Sawyer, Juliet, the Doc and Kate all emote at one another in assorted combinations and with varying degrees of difficulty. Luckily, elsewhere, Locke has taken Ben in to see Jacob. But wait, Lapidus and those kooky other passengers from Flight 316 have shown up with the dead body of Locke in a box. Because heck, it's not a season finale until John Locke is dead and in a box somewhere, is it? which means, of course, as any fool could see, that it's not Locke in there with Ben and Jacob, but rather Jacob's archenemy, the body-possessing Mr. Terrible. He goads Ben into killing Jacob, who hence dies and is then hastily cremated to serve on funeral expenses. This will presumably have huge ramifications, but we don't get to see them because Juliet gets her wish, and following a fun-filled shootout of the finest kind and some electromagnetic nonsense and fill skewering, she falls down a hole where she finally manages to set that freaking nuke off. Fade to white in a totally non-frustrating way.
Bravo, bravo. Those are fantastic.
It was a lot to get through.
My first question, at the end of the first part, you've alluded to not Locke, and I was thinking about this today because I can no longer remember when that twist was sort of finally, I guess, revealed, solidified, dawned on us.
It was solidified in the second half of the incident. So yeah. So I technically referred to him as undead Locke in the first part.
Okay, yes, that's what I want. That's what I wanted to call out because we know, I guess we're led to believe that Locke has been brought back because that was always the plan. That was what everyone was told. You have to bring everyone back, including him, and that there he is in, and of course his demeanor reflects a man who's been brought back to life.
Yes.
Little did we know he is the man in black. So I was trying to think, is that moment in part 2 when Jacob says, I guess you found your loophole.
Yeah, that's in part 2, yes.
That's kind of the moment, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. That's the big callback, yes.
Yeah, so this episode, I appreciate this episode because I think the show's greatest feat is the twist, the surprise fate of John Locke. For me, that's the thing that I love most about the show, the thing that I'm most impressed with, the thing that I still think about, still to this day, is how they pulled that off. And this episode contains that moment.
There are a lot of questions resolved in this episode. There's a lot of stuff that gets paid off in this season 5 finale. You finally see Jacob for one thing, but yeah. Should we quickly go through the details of writer, director, etc.?
Oh, of course. I'm just so excited, but we've got to pay homage. We've got to acknowledge.
So this one was written by Damon Lindelof and Carlton Cuse. It was directed by Jack Bender. It aired in the US on May 13th, 2009, and in Australia a couple of weeks later, the first part on May 27th, then a week after that on June the 3rd. And if you thought I was waiting 2 weeks to watch the first part of this and another week to watch the second part, you've got rocks in your head. I watched this also on May 13th.
At least we'd caught up by that point, right? It was no longer a September premiere and a February premiere in Australia. We're just
a little behind.
The networks are kind of flirting with this idea of like, okay, maybe we'll give you, if we give it to you a couple of weeks later, will you stop downloading? And the answer was no.
The answer is no. 2 weeks is too long. There's so many spoilers out there. No.
That's right.
This one has an IMDb rating of 9.1, and it is, of course, the number 8 on our list.
And Dan, of course, we've got the viewership for this episode all the way in season 5. You'll never guess how many viewers compared to the 2.1 that watched the season 2 premiere. 271,000 people watched the season 5 finale.
A tiny drop off.
just a slight drop off. It lost to an episode of Cold Case over on Channel 9, which was doing about 500,000. So we from memory, 7 had sort of moved the whole thing around so much. And look, I think particularly in this season with so much time travel going on, I don't think, Joe TV watcher is still following along and just enjoying the week to week airings of Lost.
No.
I know I was definitely sailing the high seas at this point, if you catch my drift.
Yes.
And was well up to date with Lost.
Yeah. I wasn't being left behind either by whatever Channel 7 was doing.
Now, I've got a couple of memories. I'd like to continue on from my little story last week. Now, around this time, I'd sort of settled into my career in the advertising industry, and I
Hmm.
was very lucky to spend a few years working on a client called the Walt Disney Company. So I spent quite a few years working on. We would do campaigns for movie launches, and of
Yep.
course, back then you'd have to have the follow-up DVD
Yes.
campaign. And look, we had lots of fun perks and things from being involved in Disney. You'd get to see, you'd get to go to a premiere occasionally and fun things like that. But the only time I ever asked for a favor, like a real favor, was when we were working on the DVD campaign for what they would do is they would get all of the ABC dramas together into like a single DVD
Yep.
campaign. So you imagine you walk into JB Hi-Fi and there's the big cardboard stand and it's Grey's Anatomy and Lost and Desperate Housewives. And I was able to get a copy of season 5 on DVD thanks to my blood, sweat, and tears on at work. So that was I was when I reached out and asked, I was met with a shrug, and I think they just pulled one off the pile and said, "Knock yourself out."
Very good.
So yeah, I was able to round out my collection through a little bit of a work favor there, and I reckon I would have put it in immediately and had to rewatch
Mm.
this particular season to keep track of just everything that takes place with all of the time travel.
Yeah, I think I said in a previous episode that I thought this was my favorite season. I think the
Hmm.
more I think about it, I think it probably is. I love a bit of time travel, and they really like they worked this one through really well. They set up their golden rule. The golden rule is whatever happened happened, and
Hmm.
they really stuck to it. They played with all the consequences of that, and
Yep.
all the time loops. As you kind of think about them more, they explain quite a lot of the mysteries. And I guess that my favorite one, going back to your talk about Locke, is yeah, it kind of answers the question of why is Locke special? Is Locke special? And the answer is, well, he's not
Hmm.
really. He just happens to
No.
be a dude who was caught in a time travel thing, showed up at Richard Alpert's
Yeah.
camp in the 1950s and said, "I'm the leader of the others." And then Richard
Yeah.
Alpert's going,
Yeah.
"Who the hell are you?" And so he goes and sees him at his birth, and so
Hmm.
he believes he's special because he told Richard he was special. So it's all this kind of self-contained loop, and I love it when they mix up the cause and effect like that. And yeah, it's really cool. I love it.
Yes, yes. It still breaks my brain because if you this even connects to the greater storyline around Jacob influencing people
Mhm.
to come to the island to play out this. I don't even think it was an experiment, right? Like this was the plan all
Yep.
along to have someone take over. And in this episode, we see him do that as he influences people to come to the island. But was it, did he know when he met these people and sort of pushed them in the right direction? Did he know that they would go to 70? He's like, oh yeah, no, right. They're traveling back and forward in time right now.
Well, I think he's already seen them in the 70s. He's seen them in, the dawn of time. Like they're checking out his statue. I reckon he's seen them and go, who are these people
Yes.
who just keep popping up throughout time? I need to keep an eye on them and make sure that they come. They must be special. They're here all the time.
Yep. Yep.
So
Yep.
yeah, I love it.
As far as an experiment goes, they've completely lost their way because by the 70s, a rogue corporation, science corporation, has moved in
Yep.
and taken over
Yep.
and to do all the kinds of weird stuff. And so now you've got to split off of the others
Mm,
who are trying to, connect it to Jacob, and then just this Adama initiative that sort of think they own the joint, and then
yeah.
they're just as confused by everything that's happening on the island.
Yeah, yeah, and I guess the other thing, in typical Lost fashion, they give us the big answer of Jacob, but of course, in saying here you go, here's Jacob, it's just like, well,
Hmm.
we'll give you another mystery to think about while you do that, because here's his mate, the Man in Black, and we're not going to tell you what his name is or who he is or how he relates to anybody. He just wants to kill Jacob. We don't know why yet, but yeah. Very cool.
This is also one of the all-time memorable opening scenes. I think in my brain, I think of this as a season opener, that
Mm,
they'd given us this and then gone back to our regular story. But no, this is the debut, the first time we see Jacob,
yep.
the first time we see the Man in Black. We have no idea who these people are. Very similar to, Desmond riding the exercise bike. We get Jacob, weaving his
Yeah.
some tapestry, and
Yep.
I think we know immediately who it is, but they don't say it right until the end of the scene. But this scene has so much in it, and will be picked apart ad infinitum forever,
Yep.
because a whole bunch of lore is spilling out in this scene. It's I think it's one of the best scenes in the entire show, where they're watching the Black Rock off
Mm,
in the distance, the ship that would
yep.
contain Richard and all of that dynamite. And the when Jacob offers the Man in Black something to eat, he says, "No, thank you. I just ate." I imagine he's just, I don't know, terrorized some
Yep.
poor folks somewhere as the smoke monster, and perhaps eaten them. I don't know how that works.
Yep.
He mentions that Jacob had brought them here, that had brought that ship to the island, and the Man in Black says, that you're still trying to prove me wrong. It always ends the same.
Yep.
And Jacob says anything that happens before is just progress. Like everything within that, there's just so much information with all of those things. You start to, oh my God, this is what this whole thing is about. These two
Yeah.
people having this, is society good? Is society inherently bad? Like that
Yeah.
whole kind of theme. I don't, hasn't really been projected until this point. And then the mention of the loophole, and one day I'm going to kill you. So
Yeah.
it's it's absolutely epic that we get this, and the final reveal of the statue, which I only just found out in doing some research for this episode, is the it I believe it's the Egyptian symbol for fertility.
Yeah. All right. Okay.
So that statue that they built, and so you think back to the island's earliest inhabitants, and we believe that, at some point the Egyptians had made their way there and
Yep.
had a go at society, and that all fell apart because there they are building totems to fertility, because they must have all still been having the same problems
Mm,
Dharma Initiative would
yep.
ultimately have, and the others and everything. Just mind blowing, mind blowing.
Yeah. Yeah. The whole double episode. It just feels like a big movie, a big action movie. It's one of my favorite
Hmm.
parts. Like pretty much all the finales feel like these epic action movies, which is probably why they dominate the top 10 list so much. They're all
Yeah,
just these thrilling rides. You never know what's going to happen, and this one's one of the best of the finales. I think it's just a super little package of episodes.
yeah. Speaking of action, you've got Jack basically emptying a full clip after when Saeed is shot by Roger Linus.
Yeah,
Uh, here's this man who was up until recently addicted to pills, and is just a doctor by trade, walking directly into the line of fire and just emptying clip after clip after clip, at the Dharma Initiative, as all hell breaks loose. That was a lot of fun.
yeah.
And Saeed, you mentioned this in your recap. His most incredible feat yet, as he dismantles a hydrogen bomb via a notebook, via somebody else's
Yeah,
scrap handwriting.
yeah.
Yeah, so so many incredible moments.
Yeah, I think my favorite is when I mean we get the return of Vincent, which is always wonderful.
Yes.
But I love
Yep.
Rose
Yep.
and Bernard, who just like they're just so fed up with our hero's nonsense. It's just like the Jack has a bomb. Who cares? It's
Yeah.
always something with you people. It's just it's so perfect. It's beautiful.
I noted that, and it's absolutely perfect. The the Jacob introduction, which leads to some of these flashbacks, Kate shoplifting a New
Mm,
Kids on the Block lunchbox,
yes.
is perfect. Gate crashing Sun and Jin's wedding,
Yep.
I wonder if he stuck around for the whole event or whether he was there just for the nuptials and
I,
basically murdering Nadia.
yeah, I think my favorite part about that was the phrasing he uses when he interrupts Saeed as they're about to cross the road. He says, "I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I think I'm lost." And it's like, well,
Yes.
you are lost, Jacob, in a very real sense.
Yeah. And it's almost like a hit and run. He doesn't do the hitting, but he's
No,
certainly gone by that point. And if we read into that being a push or a nudge for Saeed, he's basically saying, yes, I want you to suffer so much pain that you will become Ben's hitman,
yeah,
murder a whole bunch of other people who are Widmore connected. I guess that works in
yeah,
Jacob's favor.
that's my understanding.
Yeah, and then get scooped up by one of Jacob's followers, I guess.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, Jacob's not necessarily the nicest person. I don't think you can say he's out and out a good guy. I think he's got some dark sides to his character as well.
Yeah, I quite like the performance because he's not walking around like sort of a Jesus figure or a
Mm,
holier than thou. He's a man on a beach who has been there for a very long time that's looking for like someone to take over,
yeah.
the business, the family business, and so that he can move on. Should we talk about Ben murdering Jacob?
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is where we start to get, is this the first time we start to get some mixed feelings for Ben? Because he has a bit of a redemption arc
Yeah,
in
that's
season
true.
6. And then I think ultimately we love the idea of Hurley and Ben running around looking after
Looking
the
after
island.
things.
But
Yeah.
yeah, but considering how much violence is in this show, him killing Jacob seems wholly justified.
I mean, we've already seen him kill Locke. Like he's a man who is not afraid to resort to brutality if need be. He's a very complex character. I think my favorite character detail about Ben was at one point Locke says, "Mind if I ask you a question?" And Ben says, "I'm a Pisces." And people have pointed out Ben is not a Pisces. They know what his birth date
Yes.
is. He's not a
Yeah, yeah.
Pisces. He just
Yep.
lies. Classic Ben.
Constantly.
Lies
Yes.
doesn't matter how trivial it is. He'll lie.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. There's some he does in this episode he does tell Son that he has never seen Jacob and we're not
Yep.
sure what we're supposed to do. The other fun thing is to work out how much he has been manipulated by the man in black. And has the man in black been involved in any of Ben, like where Ben ultimately ends up so that he can be
Yeah, I think
convinced?
so. Yeah, because I think because when the Jacob's helpers go to the cabin and eventually burn it all down, they go there and they go, well, Jacob hasn't been here forever, but we saw
Mm,
Ben go there with Locke at the end of season 3, so presumably Ben thought that whoever was in there was Jacob or Jacob related when it was obviously
yeah,
the
yeah.
smoke monster.
Yeah, it's fun to think about because he would get notes from Richard, and you
Mm.
assume Richard is still getting intel from Jacob. We assume, like, would generally if it's a list,
Yeah.
but then you've got the names on the list in the cave, and then you've got the names on the list
Yeah.
in the lighthouse, and I believe one was a decoy set
Yeah.
of names, and the other was so. I'm sure someone has done the homework on all of that. But I love the idea of Ben being manipulated to the point of having such jealousy, one of John Locke. So the man
Mm.
in black is now wearing John Locke's face.
Yep.
He'd just been confronted by Alex and
Yep.
told, no matter what, you will do as John Locke says. Now
Yep.
we are to assume that's the man in black, right?
Yep. Yep. Wearing Alex's face at that point. Yep.
Wearing Alex's face. Absolutely incredible. And then when it comes time to kill him, I don't think it's that hard for him when he says, "What about me?" to Jacob, and Jacob says, "Well, what about you?"
Jacob is a terrible man manager. He's just awful.
Just brutal. And so I think for me, it's one of the best moments because then Ben has to live with this. Like, okay, I've just killed this whole thing. that I'm here to do that he's
Mm,
always believed in lost his way somewhat. He's just killed the guy, but
yep.
also found out something that was always beyond him to begin with.
Yeah, yeah. He was never going to be the leader, really.
Mm,
it was all just being manipulated.
yeah. And I mean, we're not even talking about the bomb stuff. Just quickly, the whole idea of will the bomb make it so that the hatch is never created, and then that way the plane can
Mm,
continue flying on, or will the bomb cause the need for a hatch
yep.
and actually then set everything in motion?
Yeah, and if you've been paying attention, you know what the answer
Hmm.
is. I mean, the writers have made it clear. It's whatever happened happened. Like
That's right. Yep.
we know that this must be what caused the incident. So
Yeah, yes. So when the bomb goes off, that creates the need for a hatch because this magnetic thing
yeah,
has been exposed, but the flash of light is basically taking our crew back to
whatever it was,
2005,
7 or something. Yeah,
wherever, yeah,
10 something.
2007. And before that happens, before those kind of, those moments kind of happening
Yeah,
at
I
the
think
same
that's what we're
time.
supposed to. It's basically one final time skip, like what they were going through
Yes.
at the beginning of the season. Yeah,
Yep. Yep.
I do like how the two episodes, if you kind of watch them back to back, the first one ends with, you know, that great scene of Sawyer, Kate, and Juliet just standing in the middle of
Hmm.
the road, and Jack says, "Why are we stopping?" And then I didn't notice this till I watched it today. The second half begins with Locke, or the man in black dressed as Locke, looking like Locke, and he's just outside the statue, and he also says, "Why are we stopping?" So it's a good
Yeah.
little connection point. So yeah, very good.
All bases covered. Yeah, and this is classic Jack. By the end of the season, he is so he says himself, "Of this, nothing has ever felt so right."
Yeah.
This is this is the tragic part. He finally believes John Locke. He owes it to John. He's been this depressed man that realized that he should have listened to John Locke. He was
Yep.
always meant to go, he was always meant to stay on that island, but he's still wrong. He's still wrong about the about the whole situation.
Yeah.
It's absolutely amazing that, and then that has a knock-on effect with Kate,
Mm.
who, if the plane never crashed, would not get her time with Jack, and of course Aaron as
Yep.
well, who's basically like a son to her. The last thing I wanted to note is because the hatch is created from this, Rositsky, who we've gotten to know
Yep.
throughout the whole season, this is his pride and joy. We also know his fate
Yeah.
is that he ends up in the hatch himself, having to press the button, and I think he's in there with Inman,
Yes.
and he's the one that points out that the splatter on the roof was Rudzinski. So you can
Yes.
just imagine this guy put himself in this situation, and Kate finds one of the notebooks that they're being sent out through the pneumatic tube uh, from one of the watching stations,
Mm.
saying SR moved the ping pong table again. So Rositsky is having this incredibly mundane life down there, but he more than anyone else knows why you need to press the button,
Yeah.
you know, to stop from the advert. It's just it's fantastic. It's
Yeah.
absolutely amazing.
It ties it so together. I think one of my favorite moments is the big anti-climax of when Jack first drops the bomb down there, and they're all just waiting and waiting,
Yeah.
and then nothing happens. They're like, "What the hell?"
Yeah.
And then of course all the magnetism kicks in, and all hell breaks loose.
Yes, yes. Anything explosive in this series will go off like a hair trigger,
Yeah.
whether it's Paul Arts or Alana or anyone, except for the hydrogen bomb,
Yes.
which needs 8 whacks
Yeah.
from a rock.
Yeah. Good work from Juliet. Just detonating the bomb. Bloody legend, Juliet. Good work.
I was really upset watching her choose.
Yeah.
She says that we're not meant. I guess they do rectify that. She says to Sawyer, "No, Jack is right. We need to do this. I saw the way you look at Kate. We're not
Yeah.
meant to be together. You need to do this." At least by the end of the series, we see that they were meant to be together,
Yeah,
and they get to
yeah.
be together in that place. So it gave me a little bit of comfort knowing that. Not that it keeps me awake at night. Goodness. Okay, so any other thoughts on the incident before we?
I guess my final thought on the actual episodes themselves was like just that the fade to white as a kind of a twist on
Ah,
the every single episode up to that point had been the fade to black, and this one's a fade to white. And this is my second favorite cliffhanger in all of Lost. We'll get to my first later on. Um,
mm-hmm.
but it was also absolutely maddening. It was just like, oh my God, what the hell happens now? And yeah, I immediately online joining the mass speculation about what happens
Mm-hmm.
next because I was deep into Lost at this point. Yeah, definitely no way I was waiting 2 weeks for it to officially air in Australia. Screw that.
I mean, it makes me want to talk about the sixth season and the
Mm,
way that started from White, and because it played around with the idea of, well, what if
yeah,
they didn't land, or maybe it did work and they
yeah,
didn't land, and so I have so many thoughts about the sixth season. We'll park that.
yeah. We'll get to a sixth season episode soon,
Yes,
soonish.
yes, yep. Now, any Dan, any lingering mysteries or anything by the time all this had been done and dusted?
Yeah, well, I again kept track of the mysteries that were kind of arose from this particular episode. It closed off a lot. I mean, we learned who Jacob was. We saw his perspective on a whole heap of things. But some of the questions that were raised, and I decided that I'd check with ChatGPT to see if it
Oh
knew the
goodness!
answers to these questions.
Wow.
So here are some mysteries and ChatGPT's answers, and we can decide whether ChatGPT got it right or not. So the first mystery is who is Jacob's friend on the beach? I worded it as friend, but Jacob's colleague on the beach.
Mhm.
ChatGPT says Jacob's friend on the beach is a mysterious entity that takes the form of a black smoke monster.
Okay, well, yeah,
Sounds pretty good to me.
accurate. Yeah, I would have
Yep.
liked a name, but okay.
Yeah. Next, the next mystery that kind of arose: why did Jacob appear in all these people's lives? ChatGPT said Jacob appeared in these people's lives to bring them to the island as candidates to potentially replace him as protector of the island.
Okay,
Sounds
yes,
spot on to me.
working well so far.
Yep. The third mystery that kind of arose from this episode was Jacob's dying words were "they're coming," and the question is who is coming? And the ChatGPT suggested that Jacob's dying words, "they're coming," refers to the man in black slash smoke monster and the others who want to escape and destroy the island, which I don't think is correct at all. I think
Mm,
ChatGPT has completely misunderstood that one. I think the people who
no,
are coming are the people from 1977. They're coming back
yes,
to the future.
no, that would be like Widmore's
Yeah.
second, third, fourth tier bunch of cronies, given that they'd all died on the freighter.
Yeah.
Again, we will get to that lot in season six in
Yes.
due course.
One more mystery that arose from this, and this is, of course, the ultimate mystery of this particular episode. Did the bomb reset the timeline? And
Mm.
ChatGPT says no, the detonation of the hydrogen bomb in 1977 did not actually reset the timeline or change the past on the island, which is the correct answer, although they spend all of season six trying to convince us otherwise.
Yes. Oh, well, 3 from 4,
Yeah,
ChatGPT.
not too bad.
Shall we? I've got some historical content
Mm.
to tiptoe through if you're keen.
Yep, hit
Uh,
me.
yeah. So I believe this season would represent the work that Michael Emerson had done, dear
Hmm.
Benjamin Linus, that would have him nominated for another Golden Globe.
Yep.
And unfortunately, he did not win this one. So these are the 67th Golden Globe Awards, airing in 2010. Best TV supporting performance for a drama. Poor Michael Emerson didn't get the chocolates. Any guess as to a supporting performance in a drama back in 2010,
Oh,
2009, 2010?
no. Give me the other candidates, and I'll see if I can guess who won.
Okay, okay. In no particular order, you have for his work in Entourage, Jeremy Piven,
Hmm.
once again. For his work in Damages, William Hurt.
Okay.
Uh, for Dexter, John Lithgow,
Ooh, yep.
and for his work in How I Met Your Mother, Neil Patrick Harris.
Oh, that's not a drum. I'm going to go Lithgow.
It was a John Lithgow. This is absolute peak Dexter, and there's not a second of that TV show after season 4 that is worth watching,
Excellent.
in my humble opinion.
I I,
But
I
some
didn't watch much at all of Dexter, I'm afraid to say.
Yes, it's one that I would nowadays, if one said, "Hey, should I go back and watch Dexter, probably not worth it on a whole, because there's 4 really good, strong, really, really strong seasons there, and then the rest of it, not so much. But the season finale of Dexter that year has a 9.8 rating
Wow.
on IMDb, which is higher than The Constant, which is what
Yeah.
this entire podcast is about. So
Yeah. Wow.
amazing. Yeah. Also, it didn't dawn on me that Neil Patrick Harris had been nominated for How I Met Your Mother in the supporting performance in a drama category.
It's very strange.
It's very strange.
Well, I listened to the official Lost podcast for this particular episode, the one going into
Oh,
this
please.
episode. So
Spill.
this was Damon and Carlton discussing what people might expect, and of course they gave joke answers to most of the questions that people asked. There was lots of discussion about the compass pass between Richard and Locke, the one that was um, when they were time traveling, Richard gave Locke the compass and told him to give it back to him, and then Locke a bit later gave it to Richard, and people were saying, "Where'd the compass come from? If you're both
Yep,
just
yep.
giving it back, isn't it just stuck in a loop?" And they're like, "Yes, yes, that was." And they suggested at one point that maybe Jack's true mission should have been not to reset the timeline, or to reset the timeline, but not for any other reason, but to break the compass out of the time loop. So that was one of their suggestions. And the other teaser they gave was that Jacob was in fact a 60-foot tall fire giant. So um,
Okay.
they asked people to tune in to watch that.
Not just a simple man with a guitar case. Excellent, excellent. Shall we move on to list within a list?
Yeah, let's do
Was
that.
there anything in this particular episode that maybe sparked the need to create a new list? Dan,
Yeah.
anything for you?
I mean, it's the time travel season. It's got to be.
Yes.
What are our favorite time travel movies or TV shows or books or comics or whatever?
Yep.
Um,
Yep. When else are we going to get a chance to talk about time travel? Let's do it.
yes. So what's your number one?
Do we go number one or are we counting backwards?
If you don't go number one, someone might steal it from you. So I start at the top.
Oh
I
no.
reckon.
Oh, I really wanted to build up to it.
I've got heaps though.
You got heaps. Okay.
I love time travel.
I'm gonna get one out of the way, right? Let's get one out of the way. Back to the Future, right? We can't have this conversation
Yeah,
without talking about Back to the Future.
yeah,
I was born in 1981,
right.
which meant Back to the Future Part 2, I think it came out in 89.
Hmm.
I think I'd seen it probably on home video, never gave it a second thought. Thought it was cool that the shark came out of the 3D shark,
Yep.
right? That and the hoverboard. That was I had no other fascination with the movie whatsoever. But then I distinctly remember going to see Back to the Future Part 3
Mm,
at the movies, with my cousins, and then was probably drawn in because of the Western
yep.
theme. Because I was also a big Young Guns fan at the time.
Yep.
Young Guns, Part 1, and Part 2. And it wasn't until many, many years later that I could appreciate the series as a whole. But I'd
Yes.
loved the train, the ending,
Mm,
the trying to get the train to speed up, and then when of
yep.
course Doc comes and it's hovering on things. So I've always a soft spot for Part 3, and
Oh,
I've no idea how it's even regarded amongst hardcores, right?
I,
Like
I, I think
when
I think I speaking
franchise.
as a hardcore, I think it's regarded as by far the weakest of the three entries. That's certainly my opinion because I wrote something for my newsletter, newsletter.danlipke.com. I wrote something about the whole Back to the Future trilogy and how the first two are just masterpieces of different
Hmm,
types, and the
hmm.
third one's just well, the third one's there, but I accept that you may have nostalgia value for it that gives it extra points.
Well, how old were you, Dan, when
I
Back to the Future
was
Part 3 came out?
I was born in 71, so I watched Back to the Future, the
Oh,
first one at the cinema, 14-year-old boy, very happy with
hmm.
this,
Oh, all
very
right. Wow.
entertaining.
Yep.
And then two and three, I was very excited about both of them. I'd been watching the first one on videotape multiple times, and yeah, went saw both of them at the cinema, and just like, yeah, second one's good, third one, it's fine, fine, I guess.
And I mean, while we're talking about it, is it in the list, or are we talking high on your list, low
Yeah,
on the
but
list, or have you just got
yeah, Back to the Future was my number one on the list. I didn't really rank them. I just kind of jotted down some
okay,
notable ones.
right, okay. Do you want something different? Do you want something different from my list here? My number four
Yeah, give it to
is
me.
one of my favorite video game franchises,
Oh,
BioShock Infinite.
well, that's a good
So
call.
this is not, yeah, so not the sequel to BioShock, but well, I guess the true sequel to BioShock Infinite. Are we doing spoilers in this forum? We
You
we
you
can't
could
assume
spoil me on
everybody's seen
BioShock. I'm
everything.
not really a gamer, so I'll take the spoiler. We'll warn
Oh,
people.
okay,
Clip
no,
skip ahead 2 minutes if you don't want to hear this spoiler.
yeah, skip ahead. But essentially, it's one of those games where you're playing as a detective trying to understand what's happening in this far off kind of foreign town, and the visionary leader who everybody worships. You're trying to track this guy down, and then when you eventually find this guy, this old man, you realize it's yourself. So that is the
Oh,
huge. That is the the,
so
the big
Looper
twist.
style.
It is Looper style. Yeah, I'm not
Mm.
doing it justice.
All right. Well, speaking of Looper, Looper is of course in my list as well. Um, So yeah, a great movie. One of the one of two Bruce Willis time travel movies in my list. Um,
Oh,
the other one, of course, Die Hard. No, no,
I
other one isn't Die Hard. It's something else. We'll come to that.
was going to say, this it's Ryan. Is it Ryan Johnson? Ryan Johnson that
Yes,
that
yes,
does Looper? Yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember getting very excited about him as a creator, filmmaker.
yes, yeah,
Very right after seeing Looper.
yeah.
Yeah,
No, that's a great movie.
yes.
Yes, well worth a
It
look.
fell out of my top five. I could, because I've got a ranking. I'll keep going. Another video game. Are you much of a gamer, Dan? I
No,
haven't asked you
not a
this.
gamer at all. I play
Oh,
Civilization is the only game I really play.
oh, big
Big
Civilization fan.
big
Yes.
civilization head. Yeah.
Oh, great. Like, yeah, I've got it on multiple devices. Yes, whenever the moment calls for a bit of Civilization. Uh, excellent game that came out only a few years ago, by the name of Deathloop.
Oh,
Deathloop
okay.
is this excellent game where you wake up. It sounds a little familiar. You wake up on the beach of an island. Something's not quite right, and you realize that you're being chased through this infinite loop of, so every time you die, you revert back to the same spot, and
Yep.
you realize that in order to break the loop, you need to get seven leaders, seven bosses into the same place at once. So the object of the game is to jump into the seven different areas and complete like a submission, which would then cause the next time you go to that area, things are slightly different because you
Right. Okay.
finally change the course of whoever's in charge of that area. You're trying to kind of get them to go to the same party. So you realize one person hasn't been invited, so you change things around. All the while you're getting shot at, and you're shooting
Yep.
lots of people in the face, and it's lots of fun. But it's a fun take on the idea of repeating the same levels over and over and over again are actually work to your advantage because you
Yes.
know exactly where, which corners to turn, and things slightly change depending, as you progress the story. It's heaps and heaps of fun to see things change and to learn about the sort of sub stories that all these people share until you finally get them all into the one place and just shoot them all in the face and blow them all up. And it's lots of fun, but it's a really great interpretation of what most video games are, is an
Yep.
infinite loop of you trying to accomplish the one objective. So Deathloop, check it out if you haven't played that before.
All right. Well, a movie that's kind of semi-related to that is The Edge of Tomorrow, the Tom
Ah,
Cruise
yes.
movie, which is
Hmm.
a time loop kind of thing. He's living the same day. He's fighting aliens. He's learning what to do about them all. Essentially, Groundhog Day meets, I don't know, Independence Day, a Groundhog
Yep.
slash Independence Day mashup. And yeah, that's one of the better sci-fi movies of recent years, I believe. I quite enjoy
Remember,
The Edge of Tomorrow. Terrible name. I'm not never quite sure what the name is. I have to really concentrate hard to remember what it is. But yeah, a very good movie.
from memory, a movie that was very, very good, fronted by Tom Cruise, that performed really poorly.
Yeah,
Like a rare Tom
yeah,
Cruise miss. People
flop.
were just like, no, thank you.
Yeah,
Time travel is far too complicated,
yeah,
uh,
very
which is a real
disappointing.
shame. Yeah,
Yeah,
it was a really
yes.
great movie. Number two on my list is one of my favorite TV series of all time, and that is Futurama. Are you
Ah, okay.
A big Futurama guy, Dan? Are you a big
Not really, no. I
Futurama
never
guy?
got into Futurama. I was a Simpsons guy in like peak Simpsons, but
Sure,
didn't really
sure.
get into much other a bit Rick and Morty was fine in the first few seasons as well, but
Hmm.
otherwise not much of an animation head.
So I love Futurama even more so than The Simpsons, and I think let's do it. A bit of homework. Your job this week is to track down Futurama. All's Well That Roswell, a special episode, which, as you know, Futurama is set in the year 3000.
Yep.
They're able to travel back in time to Roswell, and all kinds of shenanigans take place there. So there's some homework for you, Dan. I'm not going to
Okay.
spoil it, but
All right.
go ahead and watch the Futurama this week.
That's not what the one with the dog waiting, is it?
But no, 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 you're okay. I wouldn't do that to you. That's just I've got
That's
another
fine.
story about that one.
That's a bit of Futurama lore that's crept into my life. It's just I don't need to know that one.
Yeah.
Um, all right, I'll give you because I've just got a big list here, so I'll jump to a TV show as well. And this is one of the Lost wannabes. So after Lost was such a big hit, there are a whole heap of TV shows that all tried to do this kind of massive cast,
Ah, yeah, yeah.
mysteries or
Hmm.
that kind of thing. One of them was a show called Flash Forward, which actually starred Charlie from Lost after he'd been killed
Oh,
off in Lost. He showed up in Flash Forward, and I think that was started around the same time as season 6 of Lost. Um,
okay.
and basically, the concept here was that there was this kind of mysterious event. Everybody on Earth lost consciousness for 2 minutes and 17 seconds, and they all had visions
Okay.
of what their lives would be 6 months into the future. And so then everybody, regained consciousness, but planes had crashed, all kinds of
Hmm.
crazy shit had happened in those 2 minutes and 17 seconds, and
Yeah, right.
everybody knew what was going to happen in their future, and it was a great premise, um, really frustrating and sloppy execution that kind of drove me mad by the end of it, but yeah, it's and kind of a little lost Easter egg was in the pilot at some when this 2 minutes and 17 seconds takes place, you could see kind of
Hmm.
a billboard advertising Oceanic Airlines. So
Ah,
it was paying homage to Lost as
yeah,
well.
right. Is it worth the time and investment?
I never went back and rewatched it.
Okay.
It was fine. I did recaps of Flash Forward on my blog as well.
Oh, okay.
But eventually it was just the one season. I think everybody
Oh,
just got
right.
frustrated with it and just like, what are you doing, guys?
Okay, so there was no big answer. We didn't get the big reveal as to the time thing.
Not really, no. They kind of got to 6 months later, and then I can't even remember now. Something else happened once they got to once
Okay.
they caught up to where they all had their visions.
Yeah, right. Okay. It was probably aliens or something, right?
Probably.
That's probably the answer. Yeah. My number one is a book
Okay.
by Stephen King
Yep.
called 11/22/63.
2263. Yep. Yep.
Yes. Have you read it?
I have read that one. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, fantastic. This is th- my favorite take on the idea of time travel, and it's the most unique take I've seen on it in forever, I think. The idea that there's a small portal that one man has found this
Mhm.
kind of small portal, and then when you step through it, you would always go back to the exact same time and place. You would
Yep.
always it was a few years before JFK had been shot. So you're in the 50s, life is great for a certain group of people. And this man continues to visit, and every time, the more time you spend there, you age. But then when you step back through the portal, you've come back to the present like no time
Yes.
has passed at all. And this man is running a restaurant where he's selling the most delicious burgers in town at the cheapest prices. And they keep asking him, how do you do it? Because this man just kind of sneaks off, buys all this beef from this purebred beef from the 50s, bringing it back. And then eventually he spends too much. He gets caught up in some hijinks, and he comes back. He's riddled with cancer. He's old, and one of his regular customers says, "What the heck is going on?" And he tells him about the portal, and he convinces him, "You need to stop the assassination
Mm.
of JFK." And from there, our main character steps through the portal, and multiple hijinks
Yeah.
ensue.
Yes.
It's a fantastic read. The TV series, not so great. I
No.
wasn't a fan. They really skipped over a lot of stuff, but I've probably done a terrible job of explaining
No, no, but it's a
11/20.
good book though. No, yeah.
Excellent book, excellent book. So that was my number one. What else is on the list, Dan, before we
All right. I just had a few other. I mean, The Terminator, obviously
Yes,
great,
yes,
great time travel shenanigans. Donnie Darko was also on my list.
yes. Yep.
Another very hard to wrap your head around time travel movie, but technically I think it qualifies. And the other Bruce Willis one was, of course, 12 Monkeys with Brad Pitt in
Oh,
there as
how
well.
did
Another excellent time travel movie. So yeah, plenty of time travel to sink your teeth into. Games, books, TV shows,
Yep,
movies.
yep.
Take your pick.
Including one I'd completely forgotten about in 12 Monkeys. And
Mm.
I think they tried to make a TV series
Yeah,
out
they
of
did. I think it ran for a few
Monkeys.
seasons too. I think it was pretty good.
Yeah.
I never watched it, but I heard good
Yeah.
things.
Some
Too much
homework.
TV to watch.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. That is list within a list. And welcome back, everyone. Dan, we are standing in one of those open fields where all of those Dharma notebooks are piling up around us.
Yep.
They've all been sent by pneumatic tube, so it's time to rifle through a few of them and sort through some feedback that we've received.
Your pneumatic tubes aren't going nowhere, people. They're actually arriving and being read.
Yes, yeah, unless you try and send it via Seagull, probably still on its way.
Probably.
Otherwise, yeah, we see and read everything. So thank you for everyone that's reached out so far. First up, Dan, we got an email. We actually got a top 10,
Yes.
yeah, from one of our listeners. I thought it's only fair to share, right?
Yep.
If we're going to do it ourselves. So yeah, Craig Moyle reached out with his top 10. Very noble.
Mm.
He did not combine the multi-part episodes. He
That's very dedicated. I'm not sure I could split up some of these multi-part ones and go, yeah, that third of the finale is better than the other two thirds, but he's done a good job.
No, he's been very thorough. So let's do it. Let's go through Craig's top 10, and of course the whole point of this is we want to start fights and arguments. Please
Yeah.
write in and criticize away. So yeah, his number 10 is Flashes Before Your Eyes. So that's one of the early Desmond ones, right?
Early Desmond, yep, jumping through time.
Number 9, Exodus Part 3, which
Hmm.
is the season one finale.
Season one
That's right.
finale, specifically the last part. So
Yes.
I guess he really liked it when they come and take the boy.
Hated everything. Hated everything before that.
Yep.
Number eight, Through the Looking Glass, which we will obviously get to on our top 10, but just part two. So again, more
Yep.
people perishing for Craig. Number seven,
Yep.
There's No Place Like Home, which was is that the season four finale?
Season four finale,
Yes,
yes. And he likes part three of that one.
just part three.
So again, I think he really likes the big twists at the end. So he likes to see who's in a coffin or,
Yeah,
whatever.
it's pretty memorable. And number six, he's gone with the pilot part one and two. So he's been very clear that
Mm.
these parts, yes, the other parts in the bin, but the pilot, both parts included.
Yep. It's one whole.
Something we haven't talked about is his number five, which is The Hunting
Mm.
Party. So this is season two, episode 11. It's all about Jack getting a divorce, and then the
Yep.
team go chasing after Michael.
Who's chasing after Walt?
Yes, who is also chasing after Walt. I think the most memorable thing about this is that you get another look at the others when the man
Mm.
who's Tom Friendly, who had stolen Walt, draws the line in the sand. They surround them and
Yep. Yep. Light them up.
yes, light them up. That's it. Number four is Lockdown. I don't think.
Okay.
Yep. So that's a pretty good one from season two. I think
Hmm.
lots of hatch related fun
Yep.
there.
And lots of Ben running around, like Ben and Locke trying to combat one another with mentally.
Yeah, lots of manipulation there. I think it's a one-sided battle,
Yes.
that one.
Poor Locke.
Number three, Happily Ever After. So this is super interesting. This is an episode from the middle
Mm.
of season six. This is
Yep.
the one where Desmond gets thrown in Widmore's weird energy chamber thing,
Yes.
and I start to lose an understanding of Desmond's journey from here on out. I'm still quite confused as to his fate.
Well, that's interesting because this is the one where I kind of start getting excited at the back end of season six. It's just
Yeah,
like, oh,
okay.
okay, Desmond knows what's going on. Like we
Mm,
didn't the first time through,
no.
we didn't know what was going on, but
Hmm.
Desmond had a mission. He was
Yeah.
running around the
Mm.
flash sideways, and he knew what he was doing. I was like, oh, Desmond knows what's going on. We're going to sort this out. So I quite enjoyed this one too. So this one might appear in my list.
Oh, okay.
I might not too,
Might
but it
not.
might.
Okay, yeah, big tease. All right, we won't go. Like maybe we'll find another excuse to talk about Desmond's fate, and we'll ask some bigger questions. I also made a note that it might also be the only time we ever talk about Zoe. Another character you
Yes.
instantly forget, and then are
Yep.
reminded of on a rewatch. Number two for Craig is Man of Science, Man of Faith, which
Hmm.
was our ninth, which is the ninth episode in our countdown,
Yes.
and one that neither of us were I think we had high hopes for it, but on the rewatch,
Mm.
we're like, doesn't quite deliver.
Yep. Yeah.
Just our opinion. And number one, of course, the constant. Who can argue with that?
Of course. No one can argue with that. Impossible to argue with the constant being number one.
Yes, the whole point of this podcast is your project to fight back against
Yes.
this common opinion. So yeah, Craig says The Constant is genius. One of the best steps of TV I've ever seen. The start of Man of Science, Man of Faith is also brilliant. I still remember watching in awe as I saw it on TV on Seven, back when I used to watch Free to Wear. So good on you, Craig, for getting in touch.
Yeah, and I think we agree with this. Certainly the start of Man of Science, Man of Faith, just like
Hmm.
Desmond down the hatch. That's chef's kiss. That's perfect.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Really.
It was just the second half of that one that didn't quite hold up in our opinions.
Yeah. They try and stretch that opening story across the three episodes, and I
Yeah.
think better viewed as a part one and two and three.
Yeah. So I also got a random DM on Twitter. I don't check Twitter often, but I did get a random DM from Patrick, who actually works for, or he used to work for, I don't know whether he still does, but he used to work for CricViz, who do all
Oh.
the stats for cricket broadcasts.
Oh, so he'd be good at very analytical.
Very analytical. He tapped in and he said, "Hi Dan, loving the Lost podcasts. The show passed me by when it was live, but I binged it all the way back in 2011. Then coincidentally rewatched it all just before Christmas, so it's great to have it all fresh in my mind as I listen to you guys discuss things. Coincidence or fate? We must always ask this."
I also find people that discovered the show immediately after it finished, like
Mm.
2011, it's barely been a year,
Yep.
and for that the time to go, you know what? Maybe I will check out because people would have still been talking about the ending or the
Yeah.
final season. What an interesting time! Like I get as time has passed, it's been quite popular to check out some of these old shows, but that's really interesting to me. So I'd love to know more. And also, if he's kept any really good stats about the show,
Yeah.
please share.
Well, one of the weird things I used to do, and I'm really going to out myself now. So my little blog posts that I do. I also went back over time and added in. I used to do a number crunching analysis where I would
Right.
count. I would get the script for this was after I'd written my blogs. I would get the
Hmm.
script for the particular episode. I'd basically tally how much each character appeared. Just basically add up the number of words and say, all right, Desmond's in this one 30%, or Jackson at 25%. And then I used to run a regression analysis against the IMDb score to say, all right, who's most responsible for good episodes and who's most responsible for
Oh,
bad
wow.
episodes. And I used to keep track of that as well. That was an incredibly nerdy project that didn't really offer much insight, but that was something that I did. I seem to recall that Desmond was one of the ones most responsible for the good episodes.
Yeah. Do you still have that? Is
I
this
might
anywhere?
have the number somewhere. It doesn't really make an awful lot of sense out of context, but I
Okay.
could try and track it down.
That's a super. I feel like that's something now that ChatGPT could do in like
Almost
a minute,
certainly.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Wow, that's hardcore.
It was very nerdy. So yeah.
We got a few more social media comments. Melanie on Twitter
Mhm.
says that she was hooked on episode 2. So thank you for listening. That's where we talked about Man of Science, Man of Faith.
Yes.
Benno Cook says that he's enjoyed the pod, whoever that is.
Yep.
Lachlan's Land, he is a legend. He's a big Survivor fan, and when
Mhm.
we said that we were doing this podcast, he was one of the first people to say that hand raised, can't wait. So we
Thank you,
love
Lachlan. Yep.
Lachlan, yeah, always interacting on the socials. And also, I wanted to shout out at Lost Dharma Fan on Twitter. So, this is I guess, a fan account that loves just sort of sharing old photos and moments from Lost, keeping it in people's mind. And they've been great resharing the podcast and even prompting other followers to get involved with the listed within a list submissions. So,
Excellent.
and that's where I'm hoping that we hear from everyone as well. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, we want to hear you make fun of us for some of our nominations and name some better ones.
Yes, yes. So we do have some feedback on the list within a list. So in episode 1, we did the worst depictions of Australia.
Hmm.
We
Hmm.
did have Luke Williams chime in. Luke said, "Kate eating streaky bacon in Australia gives it away." And then he
That's right.
asks, "Who has the stronger bacon game?" And I assume he means Australia or the US.
Yeah, this was something I was thinking because yeah, Kate eating that like crispy thin bacon gives it away immediately, and then I was like, who's got for our US listeners, have they seen the giant bacon that we're dealing with? The Americans love to wrap like to find some meat and then they'll further wrap it in bacon, and that'll be like the thing to do, especially in like barbecuing world.
Yeah.
And we can't do it because our bacon is too cumbersome. So if anyone wants to have a bacon chat with me, you can reach out to me on the social. We'll pick that up from there. Yeah.
Excellent. We also had Son of Mog. What were they on about?
So the Love Boat. So we were trying to remember some other TV shows that. So I went digging really hard for this because I was like, oh, if there's an episode of the Love Boat where they've come to Australia in 1970 something,
Yeah.
I need to see it. I could not find it anywhere on YouTube, but I think what he's referring to here is that the way every Aussie would show up in an American show in the 70s or 80s is with some rhyming slang.
Mm,
So you instead of saying mates, it's China plates or the kids
okay.
or the Billy Lids. Unfortunately, I couldn't find any vision sign of Mog. If you've got any yourself, please share it. But I thought that's a great nomination.
I would love to see the Pacific Princess just sailing in to Sydney Harbour under the
Mm,
bridge, pull up beside the Opera House, have all the Captain Stubing and all the rest of the gang
mm,
come out. Be
yep,
lovely.
full of COVID.
Yeah.
Ready. There's also I was going to ask you, Dan,
Mm,
can I have another go at the never made it to the island,
sure. Why not?
please? I want to add a couple more
Okay.
if you'll have me. Jimmy Bain is one of the heavies that shows up to harass Locke when his father fakes his own death. He's just got that classic.
Yep.
He's got the ponytail, the thin goatee.
Yep.
Fantastic scene where he sort of puts and they take his bag and they pick it up and they shake it. And so I was like, that guy's familiar, right? I was like, I've seen. Or at least I've seen a version of that guy in so many places. And so like I was looking at his IMDb. The actor's name is Theo Kumbis. And I'm like, what do I know him from? He's in Hawaii Five-O, Kong, Skull Island, Aloha, The Reef, Hey Hawaii, Baywatch, Fantasy Island. Well, hang on a second. This guy just lives in Hawaii. And whenever there's a production, he just kind of puts his hand up and says, what do you need?
Oh
I'll
man,
play a pretty
there are
good.
worse ways to live.
Yeah, exactly. Like this guy's just what a life. And I wanted to add another one. Sawyer's con man partner, Gordy,
Hmm.
Kevin Dunn, who is a fantastic comedic actor. He
Okay.
obviously has a more dramatic role here. You would know him from I know him from Hot Shots, but he also made appearances in Prison Break, Boston Legal. He's in all the Transformers movies.
Yep.
He's also in Veep. Were you a big Veep?
Yes, I binged Veep
Yes.
one heady 6 month period. Went through all
Yep.
of it.
He was the one guy. He was the guy that was desperate to quit and leave the government, and he just couldn't. They just kept sucking him back in. He's like the walking heart attack, the walking
Yeah.
stress. He's brilliant. So I would have loved to have seen him on the island.
Hmm. I think you've got half the cast back on the
Yeah,
island. You wanting back on the island now?
I know. I just love like this that format with the flashbacks just lent for so many great excuses to still get some good people into onto TV. Yeah. Now, I something else I thought of was because there's just been we've spoken to Fiona as well in this podcast, and she raised Shannon's asthma pump, and I didn't have an answer. Do we have an answer on Shannon's asthma pump?
Well, I did ask ChatGPT about this one. ChatGPT goes a little bit off the rails here, but bear with it. So it starts off okay. It was never definitively revealed who stole Shanna's asthma inhaler. However, there are a couple of main theories and suspects. Number one, Walt. One of the prime suspects
Okay.
is Walt because he was shown messing about with Shannon's belongings. As a child, he may have done it out of curiosity or as a prank. Number two, the others. Another possibility is that just the others stole it on purpose for, I don't know, to cause disunity in their camp.
Shits and giggles. Yep.
Number three option was Boone. Some fans have speculated that Shannon's stepbrother Boone could have taken the inhaler, perhaps in an attempt to toughen Shannon up or make her less dependent on it. Not sure
Jesus.
that's right.
No.
And then they just say ultimately the writers decided to leave it an open-ended mystery and never confirm the inhaler thief's identity. But the bit I like is the inhaler theft ended up having major consequences. It led to Shannon's eventual death when she couldn't access her medicine during an asthma attack. So while unresolved, it became one of the many pivotal incidents and mysteries on Lost. So thanks for that, ChatGPT. You've nailed
Yeah.
it again.
How how we've put so much faith in AI, and it's just like these things are recorded for, you can check
Yeah.
anytime that, yeah, that's fascinating. Lastly here, there's also been a lot of Walt chat
Mm.
in the first couple of episodes, and just generally like what was up with Walt. And I think you've said, Dan, like, look, he was special.
Yeah.
And I think that's it, and we just have to accept it. But I did find this was a nice excuse to visit the Mobisodes
Mm.
that I think these were between season 3 and 4. They had grand plans for these. They were going to fill in so much information. I think they ended up being like a pretty big letdown, right? Like
Yeah.
not much of value.
I think my favorite one was when they they showed the very first episode from the point of view of Vincent as he wanders through the jungle and wakes up Jack. I
Yeah.
think that's my favorite one.
Yeah. That's some nice bonus content. I think the only one of true value was the one that was called Room 23, and it's basically Juliet and Ben
Mm,
having a discussion about Walt because they've been keeping him in Room 23,
yep.
and they're just having this like, well, you go and talk to him. No, you go and talk to him, because the regular Dharma red shirts are running away scared. They're
Yep.
terrified of him. And then there's this sort of reveal that outside his window is this massive collection of dead birds. So
Yep.
he's still at it again with his shining powers or bird, yeah, against their will control.
So some kind of what's bird telekinesis? Telekinesis, something like that.
Yeah, some kind of aviary spatio-temporal thing that has birds flying into windows. So that I think we just have to accept. I'm putting a pin in it now. Walt was special. He
Yep,
could do things and
that's it.
would had ultimately had nothing to do with anything. And I guess,
Same as Miles being able to talk to dead people and Hurley
yeah,
being able to talk to dead people. This is just some people have tiny abilities, and that was Walt's,
yeah.
I guess.
So yeah, there's a little bit of feedback for the first few episodes.
Yep.
We want to keep hearing from everybody, so
Mhm.
we'll be visiting the giant pile of Dharma books,
Yep.
where all the pneumatic tubes are sending everything. So keep emailing us, keep messaging us, and we'll have a little chat about it and a discussion. I think it's time to get to our own personal top 10, right? Let's
Yes.
let's let's peel back the envelope. Number 8. Who wants to go first? Dan, is it
Uh,
your turn or my turn?
yeah. Well, first I'll just say, I mean, the incident will be in my top 10. It's not my number eight.
Oh,
It's
okay.
it's higher than number eight. It's yes. That's all I'll say about it for now. But it's in there, but not yet. My number eight is and this will be my most controversial entry on my top 10
Oh.
list. I'm very confident in that because this is an episode that people either love or hate, and most people hate it. But I'm firmly in the I love it camp. This is Expose, season 3, episode
Ah,
14.
fantastic.
So the IMDb synopsis of this one is Nikki and Paolo, two more of the castaways with a past, just like any of the others. What have they been doing since the plane crash? And this has got an IMDb score of 7.9 out of 10, which means officially it is the 110th best episode of Lost out of, I think, about 120. So most people hate it.
121.
I love it.
Uh, I'm so glad you brought that up, Dan, because I wanted any excuse to talk about expose.
I'll give you my recap of it, and then we'll go through. That's far shorter than my recap of the incident. Here we go. Expose. Meanwhile, back at the beach, things are devolving into a predictable shambles. This is not in any sense surprising given that all the useful people from Oceanic Flight 815 are absent, picking fights with the others, blowing up submarines, and so forth. The result is that Charlie, Sun, Hurley, and Sawyer are the beach based ruling quartet, and that kind of power base can't be good for anybody. Least of all, some young murderous couple who played with spiders and ended up being accidentally buried alive by Sawyer and Hurley. Ha ha ha, you guys. So, yes.
There's a lot of lore around this episode, right?
Yep.
Like why it exists and stuff. Do you, but is the story true that they were like we needed to kill them off in quick succession?
Yeah, pretty much, I think. I think yeah, I think the background of this one is that they put these two characters in at the beginning of season 3, basically, I think just to give them some more flexibility. We've done, backstories of everybody. We've done 3 or 4 backstories of everybody by now.
Yeah.
How many more stories can we tell about, Jack or Locke or Kate? So I thought, well, let's throw in some. I mean, there's plenty of people on the beach. Let's see some more. And everybody hated them. They were the most
Yes.
despised characters immediately. And I think even the writers knew it before they even aired it. So, because, yeah, they wouldn't have had time to get feedback and produce this episode so quickly.
That was going to be my point, is that if this is in response to fan
Mm,
backlash, the turnaround seems
yeah.
far too quick. And the way they were able to write them off in such an incredible and fun way was almost sort of too perfect.
Yeah.
But then, of course, you're not going to introduce characters just to do this to
Yeah.
them, you know.
No, I think they
Um,
genuinely wanted them to work, and then they realized, nah, this doesn't work. And so you end up with, this wonderful kind of sending off episode. And I mentioned last week how much I love kind of the style of storytelling where we see our previously known plot from a previously unconsidered perspective. That was
mhm.
why I like the other 48 days. This is that, but even more so because it's just this kind of incredibly playful episode. It knows the fans hate Nikki and Paolo.
Yep.
And it basically just builds this combination clip show slash Twilight Zone episode around them and then says, "Yeah, we hate them too. Let's bury them alive and get rid of them." It's nasty, but it's so much fun. It just
Yes.
makes me laugh all the time.
Yeah. And it's clever too, like from the Paolo lies,
Yes.
paralyzed
Yep.
line
Yep.
is excellent. And I'll never forget the use of Paolo when they are down in the Pearl
Mm,
and he comes from the toilet. And the first time you see that, I think a few episodes earlier,
yeah.
it's just a fun gag. And whether
Yep.
they knew they would use that or whether that, the way they use that, then I believe he's hidden the diamonds in there, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yes, yeah. And the reveal that they had found that station without any of the other
Yeah.
core group.
Yeah, there's a whole heap of
Really
gags like
funny.
that. They find the plane first. They bump into Ben and Juliet making plans about
Yeah.
something, and they're hiding
Yes.
in the corner. Don't tell anybody. It's very
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
They got all this incredible information that would be really handy to share, but they've been, this is what you get, right? They've been shunned from every major event and conversation. And
yeah,
I mean, Paolo looks like he's ready to run off into the jungle with the rest of the crew. And,
yeah,
do you know how to use a firearm? Can you want to take on
yeah.
a polar bear? But we're led to believe they've been sitting on the beach the whole time, probably just getting into arguments with Rose or something.
Yeah, and they kind of lean into it so much. I mean, the line heading into the credits is Sawyer going, "Who the hell's Nikki?" Because someone says
But yeah.
Nikki's dead. Who the hell's Nikki? And then a little bit
Yes,
later,
yeah.
who the hell's Polo? So it's just a perfect summary from Sawyer about basically the fan reaction. He's just speaking for all the fans. Just who the hell are these people? And
Yep,
we get,
yep.
Shannon and Boone cameos. We get an Ethan cameo. We get Doc Arts is
Hmm.
back. So it's just, I find the whole thing just incredibly funny, and it gives them a catchphrase as they go out there. He's got the razzle dazzle catchphrase, just like razzle dazzle. So it's just makes me laugh so
Yeah,
much. It has the TV, and it kind of leans into the TV show expose, which is described, I think,
yep,
as strippers who solve crimes. And
yeah,
it just uses that to comment on all the silly tropes of TV shows, as well
yeah,
as
yeah,
mentioned last time, giving us an excuse to see Billy D. Williams on the screen. So
yep.
just great, great stuff.
Is it in the episode or a later episode where Hurley finds the script for
No,
expose
it's in that
and
episode. Yeah,
it's in that? Yes, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
And it turns out that Billy D. Williams
yes.
was the villain.
The
Yes,
Cobra, I think he's called. Yeah,
yes, yeah. And excellent, excellent tribute to Nikki and Paolo later in season 6 when
yes,
Miles walks over their
yes.
graves and realizes
There's
that the
diamonds in there.
diamonds are there and he's pocketed them. And as far as we
Yeah,
know, that was he
yeah.
got his fortune. Yeah,
Yeah,
when he went
lovely,
back home.
lovely stuff. Yeah, yeah. As I say, lots of people hate this. I remember arguing, way back when, in season 6 or something, that this was one of my favorite episodes then, and a lot of people were just like, "You're crazy." It's like, nah, I don't know. This is funny. Makes me laugh. I
I
wouldn't
fully
want all
support
of Lost
it.
to be like this, but one episode
No,
like this is just
no.
delicious.
Yes. I fully support it, although is that the episode that pushed the constant out from 10th place?
Maybe.
We'll never know. We'll never know. Okay, you ready for my number 8?
Yep. Hit me.
somewhat connected. Season 2, episode 21, question mark.
Oh, yep,
So
yep.
I had to get some Mr. Echo
Mm,
love into my top 10. And I love any episode that featured some orientation.
yes,
So
yep,
I really wrestled with the episode orientation from earlier in the season, but I went with question mark because you've also got the lingering events of Two for the Road, where
yes,
Michael
yep,
has shot dead Libby and Ana Lucia. There is all kinds of it's one of the great things that Lost does is where it gives you this crazy, crazy moment, and it says, "You let's put that on hold and go somewhere else for a little
yep,
while." And you're like, "No, but I want to go back there." But
yep,
then where they take you is just as interesting,
yep,
and builds on the story. I really, really like everybody else. We love Mr. Echo. Such a shame that he ended up, leaving the show in the third season. But the his connection to the island is fantastic with,
yeah,
with the plane. So just getting the flashback out of the way. Yep, it's a little weird. This is where he needs to go to Australia because there's been a miracle
yep.
reported,
And
and
this is
at
where
least
the con man fake psychic comes back into
that's
play.
right. Richard Malkin
Hmm.
is exposed, is finally exposed. So at least that's, we can kind of get that out of the way. But then Yemi does apparently appeared to the girl who had
Mm,
almost drowned
yeah,
off the island. And I feel like that's one of those things where Lost just said a thing happened and then we're like, no,
yeah,
we're going to obsess over that. That's
yeah.
you can't just
Undo,
do that.
undo, Control Z.
Yes. But this is mostly about Echo and Locke. And at this point in time, Locke's been pushing the button. He's starting to lose faith. He's just had this whole thing with Ben, Henry Gale,
Yes,
and Ben, and then of course the Michael ends up killing a couple of people. So Locke is in quite a sort of a down place. But and then it's Mr. Echo who gets pulled to the Pearl Station. He wants to know where the question mark is, and Locke's like, None of this matters. It doesn't mean anything. It's all just ending. It's all ending nowhere." But they find that the pearl is is the question mark is the pearl, I should say.
yes,
The question mark is the pearl, which has been created by the plane.
yep,
It was Boone who made the plane fall, which was a
yep.
sacrifice that the island demanded.
And just to cut back to my to expose, Nikki said, "Paolo, go up there and see if there's a thing." He says, "No, if I go up there, the plane will fall."
Yeah,
So it's just like,
exactly. And of course we would never end up finding the pearl station if the plane hadn't fallen
yep,
and Mr. Echo was able to sort of see the question mark. So down in the Pearl Station, we've got like all these extra monitors. Like the Dharma law is going off,
yep,
and there's this moment where they realize, hang on a second, all of this just human experimentation? And they're right, like it is, but it isn't. And it's
yes,
fantastic how we ourselves still don't know if we should be pushing the button, right?
yep,
Should we be pushing the button? Turns out it's, I guess, what the Dharma Initiative had done is like, well, if we're going to have someone pushing it for a reason, let's just watch them anyway
yeah. Yeah,
and see
let's
what
do an
happens.
experiment as well. Yeah, you
Yeah.
could do both things.
Yes, yeah. So they're filling out notebooks and sending them off in pneumatic tubes. Anything that has a pneumatic tube has won me. Is I'm an instant fan. I love that. And we get some orientation film. This one, in like I think it's a pneumatic tape, or I think they call it.
Yep,
And we've now got another alias for Pierre Chang.
yes.
He's got
Is
another
he
name now,
Candle
and
this time or
apparently
Haloax? What is he
yes,
this
it's
time?
Is it Marvin Candle?
Could have, yeah,
It might be.
that sounds about right.
I think he's missing an arm in one of the tapes.
Yes,
This one he has his arm.
right.
So they're just messing. They're just messing with us at this point, right? Because honestly, none of it matters. So I just love anything to do with discovering what Dharma had been up to, all the various
Mm,
places they've been to on the island, what they set up, what they're trying to do. And then like what I feel is like a pretty important moment in the series is when Locke says that his entire life has been as pathetic and useless as pressing that button, which then convinces Echo. He sort of sees it as like, no, this is actually even more important because my brother has led me to this place, and so now
Yep.
I have purpose. And if you will not push the button, I will.
Yep.
And it sets John off on a different path. So, question mark for me drops in at number 8.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yes, and I like it. Does tie back neatly to the incident as well. We
Yep.
see the arm get torn, well, the hand get kind of torn off by the magnetic chaos.
Yep, that's right. And someone was in there making notes about
Yeah.
Brzezinski and
Yep. Yep.
going
Beautiful.
crazy down in the hat. So yeah, we've come full circle.
So was the incident, by the way, was the incident in your top 10?
The incident is not in my top 10 as far as
Really?
finales go. Um, on a rewatch, it doesn't quite get into my
There
top
we
10.
go.
Yeah,
Oh,
pretty tough.
fascinating.
Yes, that's right. So the plot thickens. We've made it to 8, and next week, of course, will be number 7 on the list, and we will be heading to season 3, episode 20, The Man Behind the Curtain.
Yes.
More Dharma Law coming our
The
way.
Ben Linus origin.
Yes, the Ben Linus origin story. Can't wait to talk about that one.
Thank you for listening to Lost Within Lost. If you have any feedback on anything you've heard in this episode, or even if you just want to share some of your own favourite Lost memories, you can send us a note via email and or pneumatic tube if that happens to be working. Just send it to lostwithinlostpodcast@gmail.com. We're also on the socials. We're on Twitter and or X, and we're also on Blue Sky, both of those at Lost Within Lost. Come and say hello. And meanwhile, thank you for listening.